Hejsan allihopa, välkomna, come on in. So today we're gonna bake Finnish cinnamon rolls and they look like this. So Finnish and Swedish cinnamon rolls I think is pretty similar, however it might be that the Swedish ones have less cardamom in it. So cardamom is a spice that is used in a lot of baking and in some foods, but not really in Finnish foods though, but it is a lovely spice. But it can divide people, not everybody loves it. So the recipe I use for my cinnamon rolls is the one that my mom uses. However, I realized today that it is actually the same one that is on this packet of dammsukker. So on this packet you can actually find it in the back. This is in Finnish and Swedish. So if you can get your hands on this, it is the same recipe that is on the back. And these are just small sugar cubes like this. It's just hardened sugar that we put on top of our cinnamon rolls. So if you guys want to see how to make Finnish cinnamon rolls, then please keep on watching. So you start with warm milk, not hot milk, but warm. And then we add the sugar. And then we're gonna add the yeast, and I'm using activated yeast, but if you have fresh yeast, you can use that. However, be careful not to use too hot milk because you can actually kill the yeast. So then we mix it up. And because we're using activated yeast, I'm actually going to let it rest after this for 10 minutes. So now that it's rested, we're going to add the cardamom, the salt, and the egg. And then mix it all up. So then we start adding in the flour. And I'm gonna use the whisk to mix in the flour until it's so thick that I can't whisk it anymore. So just whisk, whisk, whisk. And I would use a KitchenAid for this recipe. However, I don't have one that is big enough. So that's why I'm doing this by hand. But if you have a KitchenAid that is big enough for this dough, I would recommend using that. It's so much easier. However, you do get a good exercise doing this by hand. But as you can see, it's now so thick that I can't whisk it with the whisk anymore, so I'm gonna start using my hand. And then you just keep adding flour to the mixture. And then I'm gonna add room temperature butter or soft butter here. I don't know why you add it at this point, but that's what my mom told me to do, so I'm just following her instructions. And then you just mix in the butter, and then you add a little bit more flour. And then you're gonna mix it until it stops sticking to the bowl's walls. So just mix it. And as you can see, it's not sticking to the walls anymore. So now we're just gonna cover it up and let it rest for 40 to 50 minutes. So just cover it with a kitchen towel and let it rest. So it's been resting for like 50 minutes, I would say. And as you can see, it's risen nicely. And now we're gonna roll it out on a clean countertop. And I'm just gonna add some flour to the countertop so the dough won't stick to it. And then you're gonna get half of your dough. Don't use the whole thing at once, just use half. And then I'm gonna put flour on my rolling pin and just start rolling the dough out. I would recommend to move your sugars and stuff because they might get in the way. They were getting in my way, I didn't think about that. Those black specks that you can see in the dough, that's the cardamom. It gives it a really lovely taste. So now that it's rolled out, I'm gonna start putting butter on the dough. And I've warmed mine up in the microwave. Just don't warm it too much because then it turns into liquid and you want it to be just soft. And then we add cinnamon. Just sprinkle it on top, and then you grab your sugar and you sprinkle that on top. And that's the filling that I use. I know a lot of people might use something else too, but I use these. And then we start rolling the dough. And try to get it somewhat tight. I didn't do it in the first time I did the dough, so Mine was a little bit loose, and then I started cutting it out. And you can see that I have my knife on an angle, but I'll show you this a little bit later with the second part of the dough. And then I'm just gonna put these on a tray, and I'm putting the smaller ones on one tray and the bigger ones on a different tray, just to make sure that they bake evenly. And then I got the other half of the dough, and I'm gonna roll this out, and I'm gonna do the same thing to this dough. So just roll it out. And when it's rolled out, we're gonna spread the butter. And then we're gonna sprinkle the cinnamon again. And you can sprinkle as much as you want. However, if you sprinkle too much, it might be a little bit too strong flavored for somebody, but you do how much you want to put on. And then we sprinkle the sugar. And then you start rolling it up. Roll, roll, roll. And I'm trying to get it a little bit tighter this time. But yeah. Just roll up. And then we start cutting it again. And I usually try to cut off the end pieces because they usually aren't that even. And then we just start cutting it, and be careful not to cut your countertop. If you're using a dough cutter, that's probably a better choice than a knife, but I don't have one, so that's why I'm using a knife. I just try to be really careful not to cut our countertop accidentally. So some parts I don't push it the whole way through, so. But yeah, just angle your knife. And as you can see, I have it on an angle, and I'll show you why in a second. So, just, if you look at it, when you push it down now, the edges stick out a little bit. And that's how it's supposed to look. So then we just cut the rest of the roll. And then I'm gonna add these to the baking tray too. Just trying to pull them apart a little bit. And I am pushing down here, but you will actually let them rest for 30 minutes or so after they've gone on the tray. So this pushing down you can do a little bit later. You don't have to do it at this stage. So these are them on the tray, and I'm just gonna cover them up with a fresh kitchen towel, and then we're gonna let them rest for 30 minutes. So after 30 minutes, I've cracked an egg in this bowl, and now I'm just gonna pencil it on the cinnamon rolls. And as you can see, I didn't remember to push these down, so they actually came a little bit wonky out of the oven because they started to separate. But yeah, that's why you push the divot down, so they will stick together a little bit better. But you just pencil on the egg. If you don't have a pencil like this, you can also use your hands, but I prefer to use a pencil. And then we're gonna add the pearled sugar on top of these. And this is a hardened sugar. If you can't find this, you can use regular sugar. However, I don't think it's the greatest because it melts on top of your cinnamon rolls. Maybe like cubed sugar, if you break that up, you might be able to use that, but I've never tried it. This you can just buy at the Finnish store, probably in Sweden too. And then we're just gonna put them in the oven for 10 to 15 minutes until they're cooked all the way through. This is the second batch. So as you can see, this one I've actually remembered to push it down so that they'll stick together, because I took out the other batch and I realized I forgot this step. So here you can actually see that they've been pushed down. So just add the egg. And I was running out of my egg mixture there, so I actually added a little bit of milk to it just to keep it going, because I didn't want to crack another egg. And then I'm just adding the sugar on top again. And this is what they look like when they come out of the oven. Oh, I can feel my mouth salivating. Oh, it looks so good. So if you want to make these cinnamon rolls, I'll put the recipe in the description box and I'll translate it to my best capabilities. I'm not a translator, so there might be a few mistakes here and there. So a few tips I would give is to remember when you've done the filling on top and you start rolling it, try to roll it as tight as possible, because otherwise you will have mishaps like this one. So if you haven't rolled them tight enough, they will start getting undone like this one is. However, you can also help that with try to roll them tight enough, but when you cut them into pieces, so when you put them on the tray, push down in the middle a little bit and then put the eggs on top and the sugar. If you push it down properly, it should close them up. So as you may see maybe on this one, it has a little bit of a divot on top, and that is because I did push it down before I put the egg on and then the sugar to make it stick together better. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more of me, please subscribe, and I hope to see you guys real soon. Hej då!